All right, topic 3 of comparative government is going to deal with political and economic change. The first topic that we're going to talk about before we hit the different types of reforms and the trends towards democracy and economic liberalism, we're going to cover the characteristics of democracy. Characteristics of democracy are going to include free and fair elections, where you have multiple parties and multiple candidates competing. They have different ideologies. They can bring different solutions to issues that the country is facing to the table, and people have a choice between different solutions as a part of the political party's platforms. There's going to be information and correct information, education of the electorate. You're going to be able to vote without obstacles. So any kind of thing that would disenfranchise voters, like poll taxes, any obstacles like very strict voter ID laws that might make it harder for certain demographics of people to vote. So making sure there aren't any obstacles for voting, making sure that everybody's vote counts equally, and making sure that the candidates with the most votes wins. And then that candidate with the most votes wins is able to get into office, and they are then able to carry out orders. Characteristics of democracy continued would be open civil society, which would include civic participation, where people play an active role in the creation and execution of laws. So in the political system, the people feel they have efficacy, and that their beliefs and their voice is able to sway government decisions. Civil society, the ability to join groups and to be able to express your interest, and then those groups in turn can place demands upon the political system. So like interest groups, the NRA would be an example of that. Again, association autonomy, the freedom to associate, speak freely in groups, and join groups. Right. Again, in a healthy democracy, policymaking institutions are influenced by the input from these groups and the demands from these groups. All right, protection of personal freedoms. This is going to be the concept that majority rules, but the rights of all people, including the people that might be in the minority, can't be violated by the will of the majority. So even if you aren't above the 50%, or you're not in the group that holds the most, either people or has, and majority can be ethnic majority, religious majority, but it can also be ideological majority. And making sure that if you're not in the majority, your needs are not completely ignored and your rights are not completely ignored. The way that you can manage that is through the rule of law, where government's actions are restrained by a constitution, or like in the case of the UK, if they don't have a written constitution, their people's rights are protected by the concept of common law. Okay, so an example of rule of law would be how the Constitution has the Bill of Rights, and the Bill of Rights protects freedom of speech, press, and petition. So it's important to be able to critique government actions, and the government doesn't try to silence their critics. And also there's a protection of rights of the accused. So the government has the burden of proof, where they must prove that you are guilty, and you are innocent until that occurs. And you have the whole due process where they can't take your property without a search warrant or probable cause. You can't be forced to incriminate yourself. You can't be tried twice for the same crime. And you can't be subject to cruel and unusual punishment once you are incarcerated and in prison. So other democratic characteristics you will find in democratic regimes would be a neutral judiciary. So a neutral judiciary would be able to review the actions of the other branches and not have to worry about the political consequences. So they don't have to worry about being removed from office if they do something that's politically unpopular by the people who are currently serving in the government. And their rulings are enforced. They're adhered to. There would be civilian control of the military. So active serving military members could not also hold positions in a civilian government or within the government at the same time. And there's going to be a prevention of the military from taking control of the government. So if you don't have military members within, like active military members serving within the government, there will be a buffer between military and civilian rule.